Okay, let's stay on this story and get perhaps further clarity, hopefully. Let's turn now to David Des Roches. He is a professor at the Near East South Asia Center for Strategic Studies. David, very good to have you on the show. Thank you for making time for us.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
David, let's begin with this issue that Netanyahu has presented, not in his public statement on television, but in the statement that has been released earlier, where they're unable to move forward with the ceasefire as negotiated until Hamas supplies the hostage list, at least those first three names of who's going to be released hopefully tomorrow. Why is that so crucial for Netanyahu? Because for lay people like me, think, why do you need the exact names? Let's just move forward and get people out of there.
Yeah, there's two reasons. So the first is just a general bureaucratic thing, which is, you're at the start of what everybody hopes will be a process of releasing hostages. And when you initiate something, there's sort of a bureaucratic or an organizational leadership impetus to go by the book at the start, because if you start off ignoring things that have been agreed to, it's over time the adherence erodes further and further. That may be a possibility. But a second one, which I think is more germane to these negotiations, is that they have negotiated very specific ratios of what Palestinian prisoners or detainees are released in exchange for what hostages. And it's based on things like gender, age, status with the military. And so if there is a variation at the 11th hour, that has an impact on what Israel has agreed to release. So it could skew the agreed upon proportionate nature of the releases, the value, if you will, assigned to each person being released.
What's your gut sense at this point? Are things going to move forward as scheduled tomorrow?
I think tomorrow will go ahead. I think that beyond that, it's anyone's guess. I mean, because there's both sides will say we want to comply with this and then argue over the implementation. And I think that one of the key issues we're going to see is if tomorrow does go ahead, we'll probably see both Israeli attacks on Hamas continuing, probably because Hamas will try to reposition military forces. So it's going to be very tenuous. And I think that there will be a lot of argument over the definition of what's happened and the exact terms of the agreement.
Let's say, hopefully, things go according to plan tomorrow, and there's at least a break in the fighting coming at 8:30 in the morning local time. And then over the course of the day, hostages start getting released. Can you walk me through what we should anticipate? What will that process look like?
Yeah, well, I don't know specifically, but in general, you have two steps. So the first step is the people to be released have to go to some sort of staging area. And then the people who are going to accept their people back, who are going to accept prisoners from Israel, in the case of Hamas, or hostages in the case of Israel, they have to be able to verify that the person that they're getting is who they think they're getting. So I don't know what the exact mechanism of that's going to be. So during the Korean War, for example, Indian Army soldiers were used to sort of hold POWs who were exchanged from United Nations forces and the Communist Chinese North Korean forces in order to do that. Of course, we've all seen the spy exchange in movies on the bridge at Potsdam, but I don't know what the mechanism is for here. And I think what complicates this is some of the hostages being held in Gaza are not being held by Hamas. So it's still a little uncertain to me what exactly this mechanism is going to be. And that may be a contributing factor to why Netanyahu is so adamant about knowing exactly who is going to be coming back to Israel.
Talk to me about the Philadelphia corridor, because the Prime Minister made a point of saying, no, we are maintaining control of this corridor, this access. And he clarified 2 points. One, they don't want arms getting in, and they don't want some of the hostages getting out or being shipped out of there. What's your read of that?
Yeah, so the Philadelphia corridor is the only part of Gaza that is not adjacent to Israel. It's adjacent to Egypt. And historically, That has been the main smuggling route for things getting out of Gaza, to include personnel, and for things like weapons and other contraband, cigarettes, alcohol, whatever, coming in. The Egyptian authorities have cracked down on it from time to time. When military operations started in Gaza, I think there was a general consensus in the Israeli security establishment that Israel needed to control this corridor to some depth inside of Gaza. And the farther you control this, the harder it is to tunnel under. It becomes exponentially more difficult. So I think they need to do this. One point that we haven't seen in the media, though, is that the amount of forces that Egypt can station adjacent to the border and that Israel can station on the border with Egypt are limited by the Camp David Accords. So there's a complicating factor here, which is that Egypt has a say in how many Israeli security forces can be within, I think it's 10 kilometers of the Egyptian border. So this has an issue that may reverberate beyond just Gaza, Israel.
But presuming that Egypt and Israel are on good terms for the most part, would the Egyptians show some leniency on this?
Yes, just as, for example, Egypt is not allowed to, they're limited in the amount of military forces they can station in the Sinai Peninsula, but when they were conducting a counterinsurgency against Daesh-affiliated groups, Israel did not object to them stationing large forces. But it injects an issue, which is Egypt has a say, which most analysts have overlooked.
Okay, no, you're absolutely right, because this is not a point that had been brought up previously. So thank you for bringing that up.
Happy to help.
Well, before I let you go, David, let me take another moment of your time and just talk about what we should be anticipating. You gave us a sense of tomorrow, but what happens over the course of the next 6 weeks? And let's hope that things will move into phase 2 and phase 3. I think it's safe for me to say that on behalf of most people on this planet who just want to see some safety and security return to this part of the world. For the time being, what is going to happen to Gaza? Who is going to maintain control? And where is Hamas going to be in the middle of all of this?
So this is the problem that, people have been focused on the immediate objective, the cessation of hostilities. But Gaza has to become a functioning political and economic entity, or else you're going to have a continual state of warfare. Humanitarian assistance is just stopping the immediate crisis. It's bringing in food and things like that. But what Gaza needs is reconstruction. That requires some sort of political control, but that can't be with Hamas. That's unacceptable to Israel, and quite frankly, it's unacceptable to potential donor countries. We saw at the start of the conflict, Hamas published a video showing a European Union-funded water pipe being dug up, converted into a rocket, and fired at Israel. So the European Union is not going to pay for that to happen again. What we need to get is some sort of functioning civil government in Gaza that is not Hamas, that used to be the Palestinian Authority. So it remains to be seen what's happening. But I don't think anybody from outside is eager to try to govern Gaza.
Okay, we'll wait and see what happens. Tomorrow being the primary thing, at least for the time being. David Des Roches, thank you so much for your time, for your insights, your expertise, and I hope we can turn to you again.
Anytime.
Thank you.